Commander Vexhall floated in the observation chamber of his ship, watching the blue planet spin slowly below. His four eyes studied the data streams flowing across the holographic displays. Earth, they called it. Such a simple name for what would be their easiest conquest yet. The planet looked peaceful from space. White clouds swirled over green and brown continents. Tiny lights dotted the dark side where the primitive inhabitants lived. Vexhal's tentacles twitched with amusement. These humans had no idea what was coming. His second-in-command, Officer Kretak, slithered up beside him. "The final reports are ready, Commander." Vexhal took the datapad and scanned through the information. Everything confirmed what they already knew. The humans were pathetically backward. Their fastest ships could barely escape their own gravity. Well, their weapons were crude chemical explosives and metal projectiles. They had no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no quantum computers. "Look at this," Vexhal said, pointing to a section of the report. "They still burn fossil fuels for energy. They haven't even mastered fusion power yet." Kretak's breathing slits fluttered in what passed for laughter among their species. "My hatchlings have more advanced technology in their learning toys." The data painted a picture of a world divided. The humans fought constantly among themselves. Their planet was split into hundreds of separate nations, each with its own military and government. They couldn't even agree on simple things like trade or borders. How could such a fractured species possibly stand against the might of the Zephyrian Empire? Vexhal switched the display to show Earth's military capabilities. The numbers were laughable. Their largest armies had maybe a few million soldiers. Their weapons could barely penetrate basic armor plating. Their aircraft moved slower than a Zephyrian cargo hauler. Their most powerful bombs were primitive fusion devices that would barely scratch a warship's hull. "Have they detected our observation fleet?" Vexhal asked. "Negative, Commander. Their sensors are far too primitive. We could park a dreadnought in their upper atmosphere and they wouldn't notice." The Zephyrian Empire had been expanding across the galaxy for 3 centuries. They had conquered 17 star systems, each home to dozens of worlds. Some species had put up fierce resistance. Others had surrendered immediately when they saw the Empire's power. But none had been as helpless as these humans. The Vortari had at least possessed energy weapons when the Empire arrived. The crystalline beings of Nexus Prime had impressive defensive technology. Even the primitive Graken had managed to destroy a few Zephyrian ships before their defeat. But the humans? They would be like insects trying to fight a plasma torch. Vexhal reviewed the tactical analysis one more time. Earth had no unified command structure, no planetary defense grid, no early warning systems that could detect an invasion fleet until it was already in their system. Their military forces were scattered across the globe with no coordination between them. "It's almost sad," Kretak observed. "They show such promise in some areas. Their art and music are quite sophisticated. Some of their scientific theories are surprisingly advanced for their level, but militarily, they're hopeless." The observation team had been studying Earth for 6 months. They had intercepted human communications, analyzed their technology, and watched their conflicts. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. This would be the easiest conquest in Empire history. Vexhal opened a communication channel to the War Council back on the home world. The massive hologram of High Admiral Thexmore appeared in the chamber. The ancient warrior's battle-scarred carapace gleamed under the ship's lights. "Report, Commander Vexhal. The assessment is complete, High Admiral. Earth presents no significant threat to Empire forces. Recommend proceeding with minimal fleet deployment." The High Admiral's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Minimal deployment? Are you certain? Our standard invasion protocol calls for overwhelming force." "With respect, High Admiral, overwhelming force would be wasteful here. These humans possess no weapons that can threaten our ships. Their entire planet could be conquered by a single battle group." Other members of the War Council appeared on secondary displays. Admiral Quet Han of the Third Fleet shook his massive head. "Every species thinks they can resist until they face our true power. Better to crush them completely from the start." "Normally I would agree," Vexhal replied. "But the humans are different. They're not hiding advanced weapons or secret technologies. They're genuinely primitive. Our scouts have confirmed this repeatedly. The evidence was overwhelming. Human vessels were constructed from simple metal alloys. Their computers were based on ancient semiconductor technology. Their communications relied on electromagnetic radiation that could be easily jammed. They hadn't even developed artificial intelligence beyond basic automation. High Admiral Thexmore studied the tactical displays. What about their population centers? Any fortified positions? Their cities are completely undefended, High Admiral. No energy barriers, no anti-aircraft systems worth mentioning. Most of their military bases are marked with visible signs that can be seen from orbit. This was the most shocking discovery. The humans actually marked their military installations with symbols that could be spotted from space. They made no effort to hide their command centers or weapon storage facilities. It was as if they wanted to be conquered. Admiral Quethan's image flickered as he accessed his own intelligence files. Their largest military force appears to be something called the United States military. Approximately 2 million active personnel, equipped with primitive kinetic weapons. 2 million soldiers scattered across an entire continent, Vexhal added. They couldn't concentrate enough force to threaten a single landing ship. The War Council spent another hour reviewing the data. Every analysis reached the same conclusion. Earth would fall within days of the first attack. The humans would probably surrender as soon as they realized the hopelessness of their situation. High Admiral Thexmore made the final decision. Very well, Commander Vexhal. You will lead the invasion force. I'm assigning you the 12th Battle Group, 3 cruisers and their support vessels. That should be more than sufficient to secure the planet. Vexhal felt a surge of pride. The conquest of Earth would be his crowning achievement. An entire world added to the Empire with minimal losses and maximum efficiency. His name would be remembered in the conquest records. When do we depart, High Admiral? Immediately. The sooner we claim this world, the sooner we can move on to more challenging conquests. The Andorian sector still shows signs of advanced civilization. Through communication ended and Vexhal turned to his crew. Within hours, the invasion fleet would depart for Earth. The humans were going about their daily lives, completely unaware that their world was about to change forever. Kretak was already preparing the tactical briefings. Should we plan for extended resistance, Commander? Even primitive species sometimes fight longer than expected. Vexhal looked at the peaceful blue world one last time. No need, my friend. This will be over before it truly begins. The humans may be brave, but bravery means nothing against superior technology. Within a week, Earth will be another jewel in the Empire's crown. The observation ships began preparing for departure. Soon they would return with the full invasion fleet. The humans below continued their lives, never knowing that their fate had already been decided by beings watching from the darkness of space. Earth looked so easy to conquer that the Zephyrians were already planning their victory celebrations. The Zephyrian invasion fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Commander Vexhal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Stellar Dominator, watching as his 3 cruisers and 12 support vessels formed attack formation. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Begin transmission of surrender demands, Vexhal ordered. All human languages, maximum broadcast power. The communication officer's tentacles danced across the control panel. Broadcasting now. Commander, the message is being transmitted on all frequencies the humans use for their primitive radio and television systems. The message was simple and direct. The humans had 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. If they complied, they would be treated as subjects of the Empire. If they resisted, their cities would be destroyed and their population enslaved. It was the same message the Empire had broadcast to 17 other worlds. Usually the response came within minutes. But as the hour passed, something strange happened. Instead of surrender, the humans began doing something the Zephyrians had never seen before. Commander, the sensors officer reported, we're detecting massive increases in communication traffic across the planet. All human military forces appear to be mobilizing simultaneously. Vexhal frowned. This was unusual but not concerning. Primitive species sometimes tried to mount a final desperate defense before accepting the inevitable. What about their governments? Any surrender offers from their leaders? Negative, Commander. In fact, we're picking up some very strange transmissions. The communications officer played back several intercepted messages. Human voices spoke in dozens of languages, but translation software quickly converted them to Zephyrian. This is President Shen of the Earth Defense Coalition. All nations are now under unified command. Activate Protocol 7. Russian Federation forces reporting ready. The bears are awake. Her Majesty's forces stand ready. We've been preparing for this for 70 years. Indian Space Command confirms satellite network is operational. The trap is set. Vexhal's confusion grew. What trap? What protocol? And what was this Earth Defense Coalition? His intelligence reports had shown no such organization. Sir, the tactical officer called out. Human military units are moving into positions we didn't expect. They're not defending their cities or government centers. The holographic display showed human forces spreading across the planet in patterns that made no strategic sense. Instead of concentrating around major population centers, they were moving to isolated locations. Mountain ranges, desert regions, dense forests, places that offered no obvious tactical advantage. Perhaps they're fleeing, suggested Kretak. But the sensor data didn't support that theory. The humans weren't running away. They were taking positions and preparing defensive fortifications with remarkable speed and efficiency. More disturbing, they seemed to know exactly where the Zephyrian landing forces planned to strike. Commander, the intelligence officer reported, we're intercepting human communications that reference our ship positions and troop movements. How could they possibly know our battle plans? Before Vexhal could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Emergency jump detected, the sensors officer shouted. Multiple vessels appearing throughout the system. The tactical display exploded with new contacts. Ships were appearing everywhere, behind asteroids, near the planet's moons, even hidden in the shadow of the local star. But these weren't the primitive chemical rockets the intelligence reports had described. These vessels moved with purpose and coordination that spoke of advanced technology. Where did they come from? Vexhal demanded. Our sensors showed no sign of those ships. Unknown, Commander. They appear to have been using some form of stealth technology. But that's impossible. Human technology is centuries behind ours. The new ships weren't attacking yet. They were simply taking positions, surrounding the Zephyrian fleet in a complex three-dimensional formation. Vexhal studied the pattern and felt a chill run through his body. This wasn't random positioning. This was a carefully planned tactical deployment. Incoming transmission from the planet's surface, the communications officer announced. A human face appeared on the main screen. The being looked older, with gray hair and lined features, but his eyes held an intelligence that made Vexhal uncomfortable. When the human spoke, his voice was calm and confident. Greetings, Zephyrian Empire. I am General Harrison, Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces. We've been expecting you. Expecting us? Vexhal replied. Impossible. Your species lacks the technology to detect our approach. The human smiled, and something about that expression made Vexhal's tentacles writhe nervously. Commander Vexhal of the Stellar Dominator, we've been listening to your communications for months. Did you really think a species capable of detecting radio waves from distant galaxies couldn't hear your ships talking to each other? The bridge fell silent. The humans had been listening to their communications, but their technology was so primitive. I see confusion on your faces, General Harrison continued. Let me clarify something. We know you've been studying us. We know you think we're weak and divided. We know you expect easy conquest. What you don't know is that we've been studying you too. Studying us? Vexhal's voice cracked slightly. You're primitives. You haven't even left your own solar system. Haven't we? The human's smile grew wider. Tell me, Commander, how many of our deep space monitoring stations did your intelligence teams detect? How many of our sensor networks recorded your movements? How many of our automated systems have been tracking your fleet since you entered our local stellar group? More alarms sounded as the Zephyrian sensors detected additional human vessels decloaking throughout the system. Ships that had been invisible moments before now revealed themselves in perfect ambush positions. "This is a trick," Vexhal said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Some kind of illusion." "No trick, Commander, just preparation. You see, we've been intercepting transmissions from your conquest of other worlds for decades. We listened to the Vortari's final desperate calls for help. We heard the Nexus Prime crystals singing their death songs. We recorded every battle, every tactic, every weapon you used. We learned." The tactical display now showed hundreds of human vessels in positions that made the Zephyrian fleet's situation look desperate, but that was impossible. Intelligence had confirmed that humans had no faster-than-light travel, no advanced weapons, no unified command structure. "Your intelligence reports were accurate," General Harrison said, as if reading Vexahal's thoughts. "We don't have faster-than-light travel. We built those ships using conventional rockets and launched them decades ago. We don't have energy weapons. We rely on kinetics and explosives and things you've never encountered. We don't have a unified command structure except when we need one." "You're lying," Kretak whispered, but even he sounded uncertain. "Officer Kretak, isn't it? Your file was quite interesting reading. You've participated in the conquest of 6 worlds. Always the same pattern. Arrive with overwhelming force, demand surrender, begin occupation. It's a good strategy when you're fighting species that think like you do. But humans don't think like anyone else in the galaxy." General Harrison leaned forward, his expression becoming serious. "You made a fundamental error, Commander. You assumed that because we fight among ourselves we're weak. You assumed that because our technology looks primitive we're helpless. You assumed that because we seemed unprepared we weren't ready for you. All 3 assumptions were wrong." Vexhal looked at his tactical displays with growing horror. The humans had somehow surrounded his entire fleet without being detected. Their ships were in perfect position to attack from every angle. And if they had been preparing for this encounter for decades— "What do you want?" Vexhal asked, his voice barely above a whisper. General Harrison's smile returned, but now it looked like the expression of a predator about to pounce. "What we want, Commander, is to show you something. We want to show you what happens when you attack a species that has spent its entire evolutionary history learning how to kill things that are bigger, stronger, and more advanced than they are. We want to show you what we do to predators who mistake us for prey." The human transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Vexhal stared at the tactical display, watching as more and more human ships revealed their positions. They were everywhere. And somehow, he suspected, this was still just the beginning. Commander Vexhal felt his confidence crumbling as the true scope of humanity's deception became clear. The tactical display showed his fleet completely surrounded by human vessels that had appeared from nowhere. But the real shock came when his intelligence officers began analyzing the intercepted human communications. "Commander?" The intelligence officer's voice trembled. "We're detecting coordinated movements across the entire planet. Every human nation is acting under unified command. Their response time is impossible." Vexhal watched in growing horror as the display updated. Human military forces weren't just mobilizing. They were executing complex maneuvers with precision that rivaled the Empire's best units. Forces from dozens of different nations were working together as if they had trained for this exact scenario. "How long have they been preparing for this?" Kretak whispered. The answer came in the form of more intercepted transmissions. Human voices speaking in calm, professional tones that suggested years of preparation. "Phase 1 complete. All orbital defense platforms are online. Kinetic strike packages armed and targeted, awaiting authorization. Deep space monitoring confirms no additional enemy vessels in the outer system. Underground command centers. Report full operational status. Underground command centers, orbital defense platforms." The intelligence reports had mentioned nothing about these facilities. Vexhal realized with dawning horror that everything they thought they knew about human capabilities was wrong. "Sir," the sensors officer called out, "we're detecting massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. Whatever they're powering up, it's big." The main display showed energy readings spiking across Earth's surface. Facilities that had appeared to be simple industrial complexes were revealing their true purpose. What looked like power plants were actually weapon systems. What seemed like communication arrays were targeting computers. What appeared to be research stations were military command centers. "They've militarized their entire civilization," Vexhall breathed. "Every building, every installation, it's all part of their defense network." But that wasn't the worst discovery. As Zephyrian sensors probed deeper, they found something that shouldn't exist. The humans had weapons that worked on principles the Empire didn't recognize. "Commander," the science officer reported, "their kinetic projectiles are achieving impossible velocities. They're not using chemical propulsion or even fusion drives. The acceleration profiles suggest some form of electromagnetic launching system we've never encountered." The first human attack came without warning. Projectiles launched from the planet's surface struck 3 Zephyrian support vessels simultaneously. But these weren't the primitive metal slugs the intelligence reports had described. These projectiles moved at significant fractions of light speed and carried exotic matter warheads that bypassed energy shields entirely. "Shields had no effect," the tactical officer shouted as the damaged ships listed helplessly. "The projectiles passed through our defensive fields like they weren't even there." Vexhall's mind raced. Energy shields were supposed to be absolute protection against kinetic weapons. The fact that human projectiles could penetrate them meant the humans understood physics the Empire had never mastered. "Return fire, all batteries." The Zephyrian plasma cannons lanced out toward the planet, but something impossible happened. The beams bent away from their targets, deflected by gravitational fields that shouldn't exist. Where the plasma did strike, the surface, it hit what appeared to be empty ground, but sensors showed the energy being absorbed and redirected into some kind of planetary defense grid. "They're using our own weapons against us," Kretak observed with growing panic. "They're absorbing our plasma fire and feeding it into their power systems." The human counterattack intensified. More kinetic projectiles struck the fleet, each one targeting critical systems with impossible precision. But worse than the physical damage was the electronic warfare. Human signals began penetrating Zephyrian computer systems, introducing viruses and logic bombs that should have been incompatible with Empire technology. "How are they hacking our systems?" Vexhall demanded. "Our computer architecture is completely different from theirs." "Unknown, Commander. Their intrusion programs are adapting in real time, learning our security protocols faster than we can implement new ones." The answer came in another intercepted human transmission. "Adaptive AI systems report successful penetration of alien computer networks, deploying countermeasures based on analysis of captured Vortari and Nexus Prime technologies." Vexhall felt his blood turn cold. The humans hadn't just been listening to Empire communications. They had been studying the technology of every species the Empire had conquered. Somehow they had acquired and analyzed alien computer systems, energy weapons, and defensive technologies. They had learned from every victory and every defeat in the Empire's expansion. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Audio only." General Harrison's voice filled the bridge, but now his tone carried a hint of satisfaction. "Commander Vexhall, I hope you're beginning to understand your situation. What you're experiencing is the result of 70 years of preparation." 70 years? Vexhall croaked. "That's when we first detected artificial radio signals from your expansion into the Vortari system. We knew someone was out there conquering other worlds. We knew they would eventually find us, so we began preparing." The tactical display continued updating as more human capabilities revealed themselves. Orbital weapons platforms that had been disguised as communication satellites. Deep space sensor networks that had been hidden among asteroid fields. Military installations buried so deep underground they were undetectable from orbit. "We studied every species you conquered," Harrison continued. "We analyzed every battle, every tactic, every technology. We learned from the mistakes of the Vortari, the Nexus crystals, the Graken, and all the others. We identified the common factors in every defeat." Vexhall realized the terrible truth. You turned every one of our victories into intelligence for your defense. Exactly. We learned that most species make the same mistakes. They rely too heavily on energy shields. They assume their enemies will fight according to conventional tactics. They underestimate the power of coordination and preparation. We made sure not to repeat those errors. The Zephyrian fleet was taking heavy damage now. Human weapon systems were targeting critical components with surgical precision. Life support, navigation, weapons control. Everything was being systematically disabled without destroying the ships entirely. Why aren't they destroying us completely? Kretak wondered aloud. Harrison's voice answered, as if he had heard the question. Because dead enemies can't carry warnings back to their homeworlds. Officer Kretak, you've participated in 6 conquests. You understand the value of intelligence. We want you to return to the Empire with a very specific message. What message? Vexhal asked, though he dreaded the answer. That Earth wasn't an easy target that happened to fight back. We were bait. We've been deliberately maintaining the appearance of a divided, primitive world to attract would-be conquerors. Every species that has attempted to invade us has provided us with more intelligence about galactic military capabilities. The full scope of the deception hit Vexhal like a physical blow. The humans hadn't been caught unprepared. They had been hunting. Earth wasn't a primitive world ripe for conquest. It was a trap designed to capture and study alien military technology. How many others? He whispered. You're the 4th attempted invasion in the past 20 years. The others never made it close enough to your homeworld to deliver our message. We're hoping you'll be more successful. The human fleet began closing in around the crippled Zephyrian ships. But instead of delivering killing blows, they were using capture weapons, devices that disabled ships without destroying them. Vexhal realized with growing horror that the humans wanted prisoners. They wanted to study Zephyrian technology just as they had studied all the others. Commander, the tactical officer reported, all weapon systems are offline. Life support is failing on ships 2 and 7. We're completely helpless. But as bad as their tactical situation was, the strategic implications were far worse. If the humans had been setting traps for decades, if they had been studying and adapting alien technologies, then they were far more dangerous than anyone in the galaxy suspected. General Harrison, Vexhal said, his voice barely audible, what do you want from us? The human's reply sent chills through every member of the crew. What we've always wanted, Commander, to learn, to grow stronger, to be ready for whatever, else the galaxy might send our way. You've been very educational. The capture of the Zephyrian fleet was swift and efficient. Human boarding parties moved through the disabled ships with equipment that shouldn't exist and tactics that defied conventional military doctrine. Commander Vexhal found himself imprisoned, aboard his own flagship, watching helplessly as humans examined every piece of Zephyrian technology with the thoroughness of experienced researchers. The boarding team leader was a human female who introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Chen. She wore military insignia, but her behavior was more that of a scientist than a soldier. Her team moved through the ship with obvious familiarity. They knew exactly where to find critical systems, important data storage, and command protocols. How do you know our ship design so well? Vexhal asked, as Dr. Chen examined his command console. We've had plenty of practice, she replied without looking up. The hegemony scouts from 3 years ago had similar layouts. The Stellar Brotherhood fleet from last year was almost identical to your configuration. Most galactic civilizations follow remarkably similar design principles. Vexhal felt another piece of his understanding crumble. 3 years ago? Last year? How many invasions have there been? Dr. Chen paused her work and gave him a look that combined pity with professional interest. Commander, did your intelligence services never wonder why expansion fleets sometimes disappeared? Did you never question why some sectors went silent after reporting easy conquests? The implications hit like a physical blow. The missing fleets, the unexplained communication blackouts, the sectors that reported successful invasions but never sent follow-up transmissions, they had all been attributed to equipment failures or administrative errors. No one had considered that the targets might be fighting back successfully. "You've been doing this to everyone," Vexhal whispered. "Not everyone. Most species are genuinely peaceful and don't pose threats. But aggressive expansionist civilizations? Yes, we've developed quite an effective screening process." Dr. Chen activated a portable holographic display that showed a map of the local galactic region. Red markers indicated the locations of failed invasion attempts. There were dozens of them scattered across hundreds of light years. "Each invasion teaches us something new," she explained. "The hegemony showed us their energy absorption techniques. The Stellar Brotherhood demonstrated quantum communication systems. The Void Collective, that was fascinating. They used living ships grown from engineered organisms. Every encounter makes us stronger." Vexhal stared at the display in growing horror. "You're not defending yourselves. You're collecting military technologies from across the galaxy. We're doing both. Defense and research go hand in hand when you're dealing with unknown threats. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Commander. Species that survive are the ones that adapt fastest." Through the ship's observation ports, Vexhal could see the systematic dismantling of his fleet. Human vessels were carefully extracting key components from every Zephyrian ship. Weapon systems, computers, engines, life support. Everything was being cataloged and removed with surgical precision. "What will you do with my crews?" he asked. "Nothing harmful. They'll be guests on our lunar research facilities while we study your technology and methods. Once we've learned what we need to know, they'll be returned to a neutral location where the Empire can collect them." "Returned? You're not going to execute us?" Dr. Chen looked genuinely surprised. "Execute you, Commander? You're valuable research subjects. Your species has conquered 17 star systems. You have knowledge and experience we need to understand. Why would we waste such a resource?" The distinction was subtle but chilling. The humans weren't treating them as enemies to be destroyed. They were treating them as specimens to be studied. It was somehow worse than the prospect of execution. "Sir?" Kretak called from across the command center. "They're downloading our entire database. Navigation records, tactical analyses, communication logs, everything." Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. "Your species keeps excellent records. Very thorough documentation of conquest procedures and planetary assessments. It will help us understand how other civilizations might approach similar problems." Vexhal realized the full scope of what was happening. The humans weren't just studying Zephyrian technology. They were analyzing everything the Empire had learned about galactic civilizations, military tactics, and expansion strategies. Decades of intelligence gathering and strategic analysis were being absorbed by beings who had never left their own solar system. "Dr. Chen," he said carefully, "what is your species planning to do with this knowledge?" She looked up from her work, with an expression of mild surprise. "Planning? We're not planning anything aggressive if that's what you're worried about. We're preparing." "Preparing for what?" "For whatever comes next. The galaxy is full of species like yours. Aggressive, expansionist, convinced of their own superiority. Sooner or later we'll encounter one that's actually dangerous. When that happens, we want to be ready." The casual way she said it made Vexhal's skin crawl. The humans spoke about preparing for galactic-scale conflicts as if they were discussing routine maintenance procedures. They had turned their entire civilization into a military research project, all while maintaining the appearance of a primitive, divided world. "How long have you been doing this?" he asked. "The systematic approach started about 50 years ago, after we detected the first invasion fleet heading for the Cygnus sector. But humans have always been good at learning from their enemies. It's how we survived as a species." Dr. Chen activated another display, this one showing Earth's industrial capacity. Vexhal gasped at what he saw. The planet's infrastructure wasn't primitive at all. Hidden beneath the surface and disguised as civilian installations was a manufacturing base that rivaled anything in the Empire. Underground factories convert raw materials into military hardware using techniques borrowed from a dozen different species. Orbital shipyards disguised as space junk produce vessels incorporating the best technologies from every civilization we've encountered. Deep space monitoring stations track movement across dozens of star systems. The scale was staggering. The humans had built a military-industrial complex that spanned their entire solar system, while making it look like they had barely achieved spaceflight. It was the most sophisticated deception in galactic history. But why? Vexhal asked. Why go to such elaborate lengths to appear weak? Because appearing weak is the best defense against superior forces. Every predator in the galaxy looks for easy targets. By appearing to be the easiest target of all, we ensure that only small expeditionary forces come to investigate, forces we can handle and learn from. Dr. Chen's tablet chimed with an incoming message. She read it quickly and smiled with satisfaction. Excellent news, Commander. Your fleet's navigation computers contained detailed charts of 17 conquered star systems, including the locations of Empire staging areas and supply depots. This intelligence will be invaluable for understanding large-scale military operations. Vexhal felt sick. Not only had his mission failed catastrophically, but he had handed the humans detailed intelligence about the Empire's entire expansion, infrastructure. Information that had taken centuries to gather was now in the possession of beings who treated warfare as an academic exercise. You've made a terrible mistake, he said desperately. The Empire will send larger fleets when we don't report back. They'll bring enough force to sterilize your entire system. Dr. Chen's smile grew wider. Commander, haven't you been listening? We want them to send larger fleets. The bigger the force, the more we learn. The more advanced the technology, the better our defensive capabilities become. Every escalation makes us stronger. The human scientist returned to her work, leaving Vexhal to contemplate the horrifying truth. Earth wasn't just a trap for small invasion forces. It was bait designed to attract increasingly dangerous threats. And every threat that answered, the call made humanity more dangerous than anyone in the galaxy suspected. 3 months after the failed invasion, Commander Vexhal found himself aboard a small transport vessel approaching the edge of Empire space. The humans had kept their promise. After extensive interviews and examinations, they had released the surviving members of his crew at a neutral trading station where Empire ships could collect them. But Vexhal knew he was no longer the same being who had confidently led the invasion fleet to Earth. The humans had changed him, and not through torture or brainwashing. They had simply shown him the truth about humanity's place in the galaxy, and that truth was more terrifying than any physical threat. The debriefing at Empire headquarters was unlike anything in military history. High Admiral Thexmore and the entire War Council listened in stunned silence as Vexhal described what he had witnessed. The systematic deception, the hidden military infrastructure, the collection and analysis of alien technologies. All of it seemed impossible. You're telling us, Admiral Quethan said slowly, that the humans have been deliberately attracting invasion fleets in order to study and capture alien military technology? Yes, Admiral. They've turned their entire civilization into a research project focused on understanding galactic military capabilities. Every species that has attempted to conquer them has instead become their teacher. High Admiral Thexmore studied the recovered data files with growing unease. The humans had allowed Vexhal to keep certain information, carefully selected intelligence that painted a picture of capabilities far beyond what anyone had suspected. These weapon specifications, they described technologies that shouldn't be possible with their apparent level of development. They're not using their own technology, Admiral. They're using ours, and everyone else's. They've created hybrid systems that combine the best features from dozens of different civilizations. The implications were staggering. If the humans had been collecting advanced technologies for decades, their true capabilities were completely unknown. They could have weapon systems that surpassed anything in the Empire's arsenal, defensive technologies that rendered conventional attacks useless, and intelligence networks that reached across the galaxy. What do they want? Asked Admiral Krelak of the Strategic Planning Division. Vexhal remembered Dr. Chen's words and shuddered. They want to be ready. They believe that eventually they'll encounter a threat they can't handle with their current resources. Every invasion attempt teaches them something new about potential enemies. But they've never left their system, Admiral Quethan protested. How can beings with no interstellar presence pose a threat to the Empire? Because they don't need To leave their system, Admiral. They've convinced aggressive species across the galaxy to come to them and deliver their military secrets voluntarily. We did exactly what they wanted us to do. The War Council spent hours analyzing the intelligence Vexhall had brought back. The more they learned, the more disturbing the picture became. The humans hadn't just defeated the Zephyrian invasion. They had absorbed it, learned from it, and used it to become more dangerous. Recommend immediate classification of Earth as a prohibited zone, suggested Admiral Krelak. All Empire vessels should avoid that system entirely, but High Admiral Thexmore was thinking more strategically. If we avoid them, other species won't. The humans will continue growing stronger by defeating and studying other civilizations. Eventually, they may become powerful enough to pose a direct threat to the Empire. What do you suggest, High Admiral? We need to warn everyone. Every civilization in the galaxy needs to know what Earth really represents. Within days, the Empire began broadcasting warnings across all known communication networks. The message was simple but urgent. Earth was not what it appeared to be. The primitive, divided world on the galaxy's rim was actually a sophisticated trap designed to capture and study military technologies from advanced civilizations. The response was immediate and dramatic. Some species refused to believe the warnings, convinced that the mighty Zephyrian Empire was simply making excuses for an embarrassing defeat. Others took the intelligence seriously and began analyzing their own encounters with unexplained fleet disappearances. The Stellar Confederation was the first to confirm the Empire's warnings. Their intelligence services had records of 3 separate exploration fleets that had vanished in the vicinity of Earth's star system over the past 15 years. Ships that had been investigating what appeared to be a primitive world had simply disappeared without sending any distress signals. The Galactic Trade Union added their own disturbing intelligence. Several merchant vessels had reported strange encounters with primitive human ships in deep space. Ships that had demonstrated impossible maneuverability and scanning capabilities while maintaining the appearance of crude chemical-powered vessels. As the intelligence picture developed, the scope of humanity's deception became clear. They hadn't just been passively waiting for invasion fleets. They had been actively monitoring galactic civilization, tracking the movements of potentially aggressive species and preparing responses tailored to specific threats. The Nexus Prime, survivors, crystalline beings who had escaped the Empire's conquest of their home system, came forward with the most shocking revelation of all. They had detected human monitoring stations in their system years before the Empire's arrival. The humans had watched the entire conquest, recorded every weapon system and tactical maneuver, and somehow extracted survivors before the final battle. They saved us, the Nexus crystals sang in their harmonic language. Not from kindness, but to preserve our knowledge. We taught them crystalline computing techniques in exchange for sanctuary. Now we understand. We weren't refugees. We were teachers. The pattern repeated across dozens of star systems. Survivors from conquered worlds reported encounters with mysterious human ships that had appeared during the final battles, always offering sanctuary, always seeking knowledge, always learning from every encounter. High Admiral Thexmore called an emergency session of the Galactic Security Council, an organization that hadn't met in over a century. Representatives from every major civilization gathered to share intelligence about the human threat. The meeting was unlike anything in recorded history. Species that had been enemies for millennia found themselves united by a common fear. Humans had been studying all of them, learning their weaknesses, preparing countermeasures for their military doctrines. They're not conquerors, Admiral Vexhall told the assembled representatives. They're collectors. They collect military knowledge the way other species collect art or scientific data. And they've been doing it for decades, without anyone noticing. The Andorian delegate raised a disturbing question. If they've been preparing for so long, studying so many different military systems, what happens when they decide they're ready? What happens when Earth finally reveals its true capabilities? No one had an answer. The humans had demonstrated that they could defeat invasion fleets while maintaining the appearance of a primitive world. They had shown that they could absorb and adapt alien technologies with frightening efficiency. They had proven that they could coordinate galactic-scale intelligence operations without anyone detecting their activities. But perhaps most disturbing of all was the realization that came from Vexhal's final report. During his captivity, he had asked Dr. Chen what humanity's ultimate goal was. Her answer had been simple and terrifying. We want to make sure that when the galaxy's real predators finally show themselves, we'll be the apex predator they have to face. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't preparing to defend their single world. They were preparing to become the dominant military force in the galaxy, and they had been using every aggressive civilization's expansion attempts as training exercises for that ultimate confrontation. As news of the human threat spread across the galaxy, expansion fleets began changing course. Aggressive species started avoiding the outer rim territories. The age of easy conquest was over, ended by the discovery that the galaxy's most dangerous predators had been disguising themselves as the most vulnerable prey. And on a small blue world on the galaxy's edge, human monitoring stations recorded every warning transmission, every tactical discussion, every strategic planning session. They listened, they learned, and they prepared for whatever would come next. The galaxy had finally learned why Earth had looked so easy to conquer. It was supposed to.